Welcome to this very special interview. We've got Kristen Hadeed here. She's the author of this amazing book. It's called Permission to Screw Up: How I Learned How to Lead by Doing Almost Everything Wrong. Kristen and I met at an author event in 2018, I think, Kristen.
Yeah.
And I just absolutely loved her candor and her just how grounded she is, and we just instantly connected, and I thought this would be a great interview. If you're not familiar with me, my name is Christina Moreland. I'm an author of books to help moms, including the Secrets of the Super Moms series and Fit Mom Secrets. And I would love to talk about this and talk about how moms can enter this conversation, because we're raising the next generation of employees and business leaders. Yeah. So Kristen's got lots to share with us today. So we're going to go ahead and get started. All right. So Kristen, I loved your book. That in the very beginning, you talk about how you started the organization. Oh, by the way, she's the CEO and founder of Student Maid, which is a cleaning service organization run exclusively by college students, which is incredible. And in the very beginning of her book, she talks about how a certain pair of jeans motivated her to start this company. So Kristen, I'm going to let you take it from there.
Yeah. So hi to everyone who's joining. I was a freshman in college in 2006. I went to the University of Florida in Gainesville. And, I think like most young people, I was really lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life and changed my major like 9 times and finally thought, okay, I decided to work on Wall Street. That was going to be my plan. And I was always entrepreneurial as a kid, but I didn't think that it was in the cards for me because my parents weren't entrepreneurs. And so I just, I think all my friends talked about success being the amount of money that you made after school. So I chose a major that would lead to a high salary because that at the time, that's what was most important to me. And life had a different plan for me. I went to the mall one day. I think I was 19 and I was so broke. I should have never been at the mall, but I fell in love with a pair of $99 jeans. And I don't know what it was about them, but I saw them and I just thought I will do whatever it takes to make $99 to buy these. And I knew my parents would never give me the money. And I'm sure we're going to talk more about my parents, but they definitely did not, it was like, you have to work for what you want. And so I decided to put an ad on Craigslist to clean someone's house just to buy these jeans. Never in a million years thinking it would actually lead to a company, but that's kind of how it all started.
Awesome. That's awesome. So there's obviously something that your parents taught you that they would not be okay with you buying a $99 pair of jeans. And so you had to figure this out for yourself. And what do you think is the lesson that we moms can teach our children about waiting, about hard work, and about earning something?
Yeah, so maybe it would help if I can just give some context as to where my company is today so you understand like where that one day at the mall kind of led me to, and then I can go back to that.
That's perfect.
Yeah, so Student Maid is my company. We have been in business, May will be 10 years officially, which is crazy. And I think I liked the challenge of, I started cleaning by myself. I then hired a couple people, got a big contract. Things just kind of took off from there. And I had no clue what I was doing. And it was a very hard situation because here I am as a leader. I don't have any experience in business. I'm in a really tough industry where people don't like coming to work. And the work that you're asking people to do is really, I would say not glamorous and not fun. And so how do you, as an inexperienced leader, figure out how to do that? And I think it was that challenge that was exciting to me. And it's the reason I actually turned down a job in finance to stick with my company. But over time, what I realized is it was never the cleaning. There was something else really special about what I was doing that made me want to get up every day. And I learned over time that it was our environment and the fact that what we really do is we build leaders. Mm-hmm. And so I think, here I am, a young person trying to figure it out. And I was learning all these lessons that were so profound and so important about success and life and things that you're not taught in school. And I looked around in my company and we employ primarily students.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, if I'm learning these things, I'm sure the people in my company would want to learn these things. So our culture of building leaders kind of organically started that way. Now it's that's all we do. Our students take classes where they learn things like how to build relationships and how to find their strengths and things that don't have anything to do with cleaning, but have everything to do with success later in life. And so what we do is we equip them with the skills they really need to be successful. They clean houses while they're learning these things, and then we launch them into the world. So all that being said, I recognize now, later, looking back, the impact that my parents had on me and in building the kind of company that I have. And I remember as a kid, first of all, failure was not a bad thing. It was something that we talked about all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We were actually encouraged to fail because we were taught that it's a lesson and it's a gift. And if you can learn to see it that way, you let go of fear and you take risks and you are more likely to really have success in your life. And so I can remember as a kid sitting around the dinner table talking about what didn't go well that day. And we would all share, my parents would share. It was such an amazing example that they set because they would openly admit things that hadn't gone well. And then we would talk about, well, what did you learn from it? And so I think that taught me to be resilient.
Yeah.
And there were so many times in my company where I wanted to give up and I didn't because of that. Also, the hard work thing. My parents, we were not wealthy by any means, but they had the resources to provide things and they chose not to because they wanted us to learn, my sister and I, that you have to work for what you get. And I think the problem today and what I see in my employees is it's like we're not taught patience anymore because everything is so instant, technology is so instant. And so what happens is you start in your career, your job, and you think that things happen instantly. Like you get that promotion and you get moved, and it's not how it works. So you end up going from company to company thinking you're going to find it somewhere else and you don't. So they taught us to work hard, be patient, that meaningful things take time. And I think it's a big part of why I never gave up in building the company.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about your, on page, so this is the part that really stood out to me on page 79, you are talking about your sandwich talks. And so can you tell us what those sandwich talks were, what they were designed to do within the company? And then I've got a follow-up question related to that with the parents.
Yeah, so I had a really disastrous thing happen early on in the company where I hired 60 people for this contract and 45 of the 60 quit. And I know you know that because it's in the first chapter.
Yes. I was going to ask you to tell that.
Yeah. So it was very traumatizing. And it was because I was such a bad leader. But I got these people back by admitting that I had no clue what I was doing. Huge learning lesson. But because of that, I was so afraid that people would quit in the future that I was nice all the time to everyone. And I thought that's what leadership was. Like, you can't hurt people's feelings. You can't tell them when they're doing a bad job. Like, you have to just be the cheerleader all the time and supportive and caring all the time. And what I know now is that if you really want, I think it's true for parenting and leadership, your job is to make the people that are in your care the best they can be, which sometimes means tough love and being direct and being honest. And so for a long time, I did something, essentially like a crap sandwich where you say something nice and you sandwich in the part that you really need to tell the person, and then you end with something nice, kind of sugarcoating it. But then the reaction is the person is so confused because they don't know if they did something good, something bad. Feedback now is such a big part of our culture, and we teach it to all of our students. We're really direct with it because I think it's so important. What I notice as an employer with young people is you can't handle feedback. You give feedback like, oh, you need to be better at dusting. And sometimes we see people cry, and it's not anyone's fault, but I think parents, we were raised during the self-esteem movement when parents were taught and educators were taught to tell us we're wonderful and amazing and all these things. So when you go into the workplace and that's what you think, and you're not used to being told you could be better, it's really hard to take it the first time.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And so after you introduced your sandwich talks, you were talking about how some parents actually sent you hate email, because their child was asked to clean baseboards or couldn't handle it or they couldn't deal with the constructive criticism. So how did you handle that? And how can we parents avoid, I guess, training and raising children who just appear so entitled and then incapable of some of those basic skills?
Yeah. Well, I think, as parents, you want the best for your child. You love your child. You care, you want them to be successful. And so I think that's where the over helping and the over involvement comes from. It comes from a place of love.
Yeah.
But still today, I'm shocked at the level of over involvement. Parents come in and they want to be in the interview with their children. They write and ask us for days off on behalf of their child, or call and are upset that we gave feedback. And we remind ourselves, the leaders in my company, that it's coming from a place of love.
Mm-hmm.
But we encourage the parents, that the child needs to do this. That if what we really want is for the child to be successful, they have to learn through this experience, and they have to come and ask for days off, or they have to learn how to accept this feedback. And so I would just encourage parents to think about, I guess maybe you would call it tough love. Like, maybe it's easier to tell your child how great they are and say that, this thing that they did is amazing. But what are they really learning and growing from that experience? Like, if there's something they could have done better, I think you have to say it, because that's what's contributing to their long-term success versus that very small moment. But it's hard, I'm not a mom. My fiance has a 6-year-old, and from that experience, like in that way, I see how hard it is. Like, I want to just tell her how amazing she is all the time, but I remind myself that's not helping her in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. A friend and I talk about this daily, about how, sometimes they're like, can I have a glass of milk? And you just serve breakfast. And you're like, well, you can get up and go get it. Like, the refrigerator's right there. You can just stand up and get yourself a glass. And
yeah, and one story that's kind of funny. So you take that, right? Like the milk example. We had a student who asked us, where can I get a stamp? A postage stamp. And we were like, what do you mean? You don't know where to get a stamp. And she said, when I need one, my mom mails me one.
Oh my gosh.
What? Like, and again, coming from a place of love, but it's just like, I think when you make it easy for your children, it's really hard once you've done that for so long to get out of that pattern. And then now they're young adults and they don't know where do I get a stamp,
Right.
And that's not what we want for our kids. So it's really hard, but I think sometimes we have to put it on them to do whatever it is they're asking us to do.
Yeah, I completely agree. So what you hire people all the time, college students, that's probably the highest turnover that you can imagine. You know that your job for them is going to have a short shelf life if they graduate or if they move on. So what is like the one thing that you're looking for and you wish more applicants had in terms of character or accountability or ownership? And can you spot it right away when that candidate has like the secret sauce of kind of what makes up your organization, what you're looking for?
Well, yeah. So we hire as young as high school.
Mm-hmm.
And, we have, because of our culture, because it is one where our goal is to teach our students the skills that they need to be successful, the main thing that we're looking for is a desire to grow. Mm-hmm. And if someone isn't invested in their own growth and development, then it's not going to work. So that's the first thing we look for. Beyond that, where I think a lot of young people are struggling, and I think if you were to ask other organizations who are hiring people, it's the social skills, it's the relationship skills and the communication. Because we're so used to building our relationships from behind a screen and texting that when we're in an interview, we don't even know how to like be a person and talk. Yeah. And especially if you're in a bit like we're in the service industry, if you're in any kind of business where you have to relate to other human beings, a lot of organizations aren't willing to teach those skills. They just expect you to have them. And if you don't, they're moving on. And so I think I noticed that more so with our high school students. Mm-hmm. And so anything you can do, like simple things like have your child order at the restaurant. Yeah. Have them call. Like my parents made me call and make my own doctor's appointments. And I remember being like, I don't want to call. I'm so scared to be on the phone. But they said, you have to learn these skills. And so I think just anything you can do from an early age in the communication department is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely, our 12-year-old, he's becoming a teen, and sometimes they're moody and they can be standoffish. And when we're at a restaurant in particular, we will tell him, you need to make eye contact. You need to respond. We request the yes ma'am and the no ma'am, not only to ourselves, but to other people. And I feel like just that eye contact is something that is difficult for a lot of kids. We have to be very intentional about it. I've noticed it in my own house. And you would think that it wouldn't be that hard, but just the eye contact itself has oftentimes been, difficult for us to.
Yeah. And, so we have one of our trainings that we do is on relationships and communication. We actually have an exercise where a student will have to get a partner in the room and they have to make eye contact for 2 minutes. It's just 2 minutes, but they can't talk, they can't laugh. It's just eye contact for 2 minutes. And I would say it's uncomfortable even if you're an adult, Yes. But you learn like, wow, this is hard. And you kind of realize how unpresent you are.
Yes.
And I think another important, because I do a lot of speaking and I speak a lot about the next generation. And with this topic in particular, I say, okay, you walk into a conference room and everyone's on their phone. It doesn't matter what generation they're part of. Like someone's presenting and people are playing on their phone and not being present. And so I think a part of it is, what example are you setting as well as a parent? Like, are you on your phone at the dinner table? Are you telling your child to limit screen time, yet when it's family time, you're on your phone? And I think, realizing that you really set the tone and the example. Like in my company, we don't, if you're in a meeting, like you're present, and the leaders have to set that tone because everyone's following our example.
Yeah. I know I'm guilty of that at times. I mean, I think we all are, and it's definitely something to be more mindful of. So what do you mostly see in the current generation of millennials that you work with? Are you seeing, because I know you're kind of like a millennial specialist. You've talked a lot about millennials in a lot of your speeches. So what are you seeing in the generation in general, and what can we do to improve this, or to work with it, or to, kind of work with this movement?
Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story that will answer this question. So my fiance's daughter plays soccer, and she had a soccer game, and she's 6 years old, so they don't really keep score. It's just about having fun. And after the game, I overheard these two little ones talking about how they did. And one of them was so happy because she had scored 6 goals, and they were like celebrating and hugging each other. And then the other little one had the same enthusiasm level, and she told her friend, I scored 0. And they hugged each other and celebrated. And I was like, whoa, how cool that they're celebrating 0. And I think the reason why I was so moved by it is I had just read an article in the Washington Post actually about a woman who travels all over and teaches resilience in kids. And whenever she's in front of an audience of students, she always asks the same question. She says, raise your hand if you feel more loved when you bring home a good grade and less loved when you bring home a bad one. 90% of kids raise their hand.
Will you repeat that question, Kristen? Because the streaming cut out just for a second. Yeah, so I want to hear it.
It was, raise your hand if you feel like your parents love you more when you bring home a good grade and less when you bring home a bad one. And 90% of kids raise their hand. So the question is, how do we go from being so little, we're celebrating 0, to now I feel less loved because I got a grade that isn't perfect? And when we look at millennials, research shows us that millennials have the highest suicide rate out of any generation, highest depression rates out of any generation. So I think we have this pressure to be perfect, to get into perfect schools, get the perfect test scores. And the world doesn't work that way, and we feel alone and lost. And I think the reason why Student Maid works and why people really want to stay with the company and not quit, we actually have to tell people to leave. And go and make their mark on the world. The reason is because they feel like they belong, and they feel like they have a place where they can just be who they are and they don't have to be perfect. So I think that's the biggest issue facing, I would say, not even millennials, just the next generation, Gen Z as well, the generation coming after, because social media, everything's filtered, right? Yes. And so it's like, as a parent, how can you show more of your imperfect eye?
Yeah.
How can you be more vulnerable and talk about the things you're not proud of and that you didn't do well, and so that you're setting an example that, hey, it's normal to feel this way. We're human. The goal isn't to be perfect.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I so hard on myself. I think a lot of us feel that internal pressure, And it's difficult to be that open and vulnerable to your kids and let them know when you messed up. And, you know, there have been times where I've definitely yelled at my kids or fussed at them, and I've been accountable and said, you know, that was wrong, or I'm sorry. And it's very hard, but I do think that that's a strong example.
Yeah. You know, I was just on a trip with my family last week, and I just got engaged at the end of last year. And so, you know, there's a lot going through my head of like getting married, and I want to make sure I'm a good partner. And I think when you're like looking at my parents, they have a wonderful marriage, and it's so easy to think that everything's always perfect. But we had this conversation over vacation where they told me all the things they wish they would have done differently in their marriage, and kind of like what they were proud of and where they feel like they failed as a couple. And it was just so special to hear that, you know, and I learned so much from what they didn't get right.
Yeah.
So I felt so connected to them that they were willing to talk about those things with me. And it helps me realize there's no perfect marriage. There's no perfect relationship.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, to not forget, like, even I'm 31, you know, and it still means so much to me when my parents can be vulnerable and talk about the things that go well and the things that don't.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, and before, because you and I know this because we were in the green room beforehand, but nobody else who's watching now knows that I was a little bit nervous about the technology. This is the first time that I've used this service, which is a third-party provider, to have this interview format on Facebook. And of course, I went through the checks and balances to make sure everything went smoothly. And Kristen's like, well, hey, don't worry about it, because the name of my book is Permission to Screw Up. So you can fail forward if you have to.
Yeah.
So a lot of the moms who follow us are working or full-time or business owners themselves, Kristen. So do you have some work-life balance tips to offer for, in particular, business owners?
Yeah. Well, I think there is no such thing as work-life balance.
Yeah.
And I've stopped making that the goal, because I realized that there's never going to be, you know, balance. I think sometimes you have to give more to work, and sometimes you have to give more to home and family. Yeah. And the key is making sure you're not leaning too far to one side all the time. But I think the biggest thing I've learned is I have to serve myself before I can serve anybody else. And it's really hard. You know, I'm somebody who, like, one of my values is being generous. And that means generous with my time and with helping people with things that they need. And it's very easy to serve everybody else and then look at your list and realize I didn't do anything to help myself move forward today. And I was someone who would feel guilty about saying no to people. And I realized all that is self-imposed. And, you know, I would say what I do every day is I start my day by making a list of my intentions for the day. Like, these are the things that I really want to do that will make me feel good about this day. And sometimes those things lean more heavily to the family and home side, and sometimes those things lean more heavily to the work side. And I find that it just helps me stay on track, because during the day, all these other things are thrown at you, and it's very easy to shift your priorities. But I remember, wait, these are the intentions that I set. And so I'm going to do these, and not always, and then also, like we were talking in the green room, health and working out and just like taking care of yourself. I totally stopped taking care of myself. I travel all the time for speaking. I have a business. I have, you know, I live in 2 different states. Like, it's a lot. And But if you're not your best you can't be the best business owner, the best mom, the best dad. You know, you have to be the best you, and then you serve other people.
Yeah, you cannot serve others with an empty tank.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the health and fitness. So a lot of you don't know, I'm also a certified fitness coach. And so a lot of the videos that I do weekly involve helping moms lead a healthy and fit lifestyle. And one of my books is called Fit Mom Secrets. So Kristen, you were just sharing with me that you went through kind of a unhealthier state. And so what did you discover, and what did you do to get back on track, especially with all your travel?
Yeah. So last year I did 77 events.
77 events.
Yeah, which is like, it was like 250 something flights.
Wow.
Plus my company, you know, plus having a relationship, and we have his daughter every other week. So there's just a lot of variables, and it's a lot. And I would just make excuses. Like, I'm tired. I'm not going to go to the gym. And I'm, you know, having to eat out a lot because I'm on the road. And I'm not really one to weigh myself, but my mom lovingly said, here's where the feedback comes in, you know. She's like, honey, I think you gained some weight. And she was
moms.
I stepped on the scale and I had gained 30 pounds and I was devastated, and my energy wasn't good. I just felt really run down. And so I decided, I can't continue this way. Like, I have to put myself first. And I started very small, working out every single day, even if it was just 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then I started making healthier eating choices, and I hired a nutritional coach who helped me. Like, when I'm out of town, I'll text her the menu and she'll say, okay, here's what you should order. And not that I use that now all the time, but it just helped me learn, like, even when on the road, you can have a healthy lifestyle. You're your biggest obstacle. So I lost 30 pounds. It took between July of last year until January, February of this year. But the difference is, like, they're habits now. I didn't do it because I wanted to lose weight. I did it because I wanted to be a better me.
Yeah.
The version of loving myself, loving myself. So I feel like they're habits now that really stick. But tying it back to business, I realized if I feel this way, my employees have to feel this way. And so I sat there with my leadership team and I said, does anyone feel like you're giving so much to everyone else that you've kind of forgotten about yourself? And everyone's like, yes, of course. So we've set personal goals together. A lot of them are health related, and we hold each other accountable. We have a deal that, hey, if we have a meeting scheduled, but you have not done the thing that you need to do for you today, you need to cancel the meeting.
Wow.
And you need to do that thing for you. And I think that sends a powerful message to your team. It's like, I care about your wellness and your well-being. And I think that's how you earn loyalty and trust.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And respect. So, okay. So we just covered this. I was going to talk to you about the travel aspect and, how you incorporate that as a company, which you just talked about that. Do you have that actively into some of your HR policies as well?
Yeah. So we're very, I wouldn't say that Student Maid is a formal company at all. Like, everything, we don't even really use the word policy. Like, everything in our company is we describe ourselves like a family, very human. When things come up, we sit and we talk about how would we want this to be handled for us. So, for example, my leadership team, no one has children of their own yet. But we know that some people want to have children. And so we just had a discussion around maternity leave. And like, what does that look like if you're a mom? What does it look like if you're a dad? How much time do we need to be with our kids to feel really good about that time? And how do we make sure that going forward, you don't feel like you're having to give all your effort to work and not home? And I just believe in involving the very people that the policies affect, like involving the decision making. So, it's health. To me, health means so many things. I think it's about psychological safety and feeling like your best interests are, being heard and are important. And it's so much bigger than just physical.
I completely agree. I remember, so when my first was born, right after he was born, during my maternity leave, I was recruited to another company. And, I figured, well, I'm going to have to learn how to become a new mom and a working mom with him anyway. So might as well start this new, great, wonderful opportunity. And it was just horrible timing. I was not a good cultural fit. I went from exclusively doing consumer products to like 90% oil and gas, very different culture. And I would have to spend like 30 minutes in the bathroom pumping to bring home milk to him. And then I was thinking every day, I was like, I'm not even spending this time with my baby. And here I am in the bathroom at work pumping to bring this home to him. And it was just so hard. That whole discussion about how much time and the maternity leave and considering the father as well. It's so smart that you're doing that, because ultimately it was the reason why I left, because I felt like I needed to be with him.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, I do think with the next generation, we know that millennials move from job to job. The average person stays in a job for 4.5 years. Millennials, it's half that. I think that what's more important today, it's not the salary. it's working in a place where you feel that the company really cares about you, and that you're valued and you're not just a number, and flexibility. And remote working is a huge example here. So many organizations are like, nope, we cannot do remote. But on my team, I had people who really love their jobs and really love the company and have been here for years, but they didn't want to live where the company was headquartered. And so I'm like, well, I want them to stay with the company. So if it means that they're going to live somewhere else and be really happy and still love their jobs, that's a win-win for everybody, right? And so I think we're going to have to adapt. We're going to have to explore things that in the past we would have said, no, I'm not doing this working from home, for example. But if we really want to keep good people, especially the next generation, I think technology, one of the good things is it's made it easier to work from anywhere. And I think the more we're like stuck in our ways and not willing to adapt, we're going to lose talent.
Yeah. Case in point is doing this interview. This whole time I thought you were in Palm Beach, Florida, and then right before you're like, oh, I'm in Houston.
I could have just come over.
But hey, it worked out, and I appreciate you trying something new with me. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So and this is my last question, but or second to last question. So this business, Kristen, you created, I mean, it didn't really exist before. Cleaning service run by college students. So what advice would you give to moms or, women in particular who are looking for something a little different, a little bit unique, maybe a little bit risky in terms of their career? What would be your advice to them?
Yeah, I think the beauty of Student Maid is I didn't wake up and say, I want to start a cleaning company.
Yeah.
There was an opportunity. I took it. Then I took the next one. I took the next one. And I think sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves to have the perfect job figured out, the perfect company, the perfect idea, that we miss the actual viable opportunities that are presenting themselves. So I think it's just be open to opportunities and not to put so much pressure on yourself to have it all figured out.
Yeah.
Sometimes the steps we take don't make sense, but you look back and then you realize it all was supposed to happen this way.
Yes.
And even with speaking, like I spend 90% of my time speaking. My happy place is on a stage, 100%. It's what I was meant to do. But I never said I want to be a speaker. Like it just one thing led to another, led to another, led to another. So I think if we just trust that we'll get to where we're supposed to be and not be so controlling over what the path looks like, that's what I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what is the biggest lesson or takeaway that Student Maid has taught you as a leader? And how do you think it applies to, this generation that we've been talking about and kind of raising our children?
Yeah. I think what it's taught me is it doesn't matter what kind of work you do. It doesn't matter what you pay people. It doesn't matter the industry. I don't even think it matters the generation. At the end of the day, people just want to feel like they belong and like they can be who they are and that the people that are working with them care about them. And I think we are living in a world today that is very, sadly, people feel very alone. And people feel like they have to be someone else and they feel like they have to be perfect. And, I don't what is the world going to look like if that's how we're operating? And so I think creating that environment where people just feel like they can be who they are, whether it's at home or at work. I think we have to. It's not should we. We have to, because how on earth can we continue if we know that 90% of kids are raising their hands saying, I don't feel loved because I'm not perfect.
Yeah. I love the lesson that you teach in your organization, that failure is not a bad thing, and that you were encouraged, as a child to share your failures at the kitchen table. And, what's the lesson there? I just absolutely love that. That's so valuable.
Yeah. And one other thing I would add, I know, sorry, I'm if you can't tell, I'm the talker.
It's okay.
Because with failure, I think it's important that I'm definitely not saying, oh, let your kids just fail left and right. And, that equals resilience. There's a step two. When you fail, you have to be willing to look at it, identify what you did and what you would do differently next time. And that's how it becomes a resilient moment. And my parents were very clear, you cannot make the same mistake 3 times. That is failure. But if you do it differently the next time and still fail, it's not a failure because you're learning, you know? And so it's just like, I think you have to require that there's a lesson in it and that you're going to do it next time.
Yeah, that teaches accountability for sure, which is definitely lacking. So, well, thank you so much, Kristen. How can people get in touch with you? How can they follow you? And how can they get a copy of your book?
Yeah, so the book, anywhere books are sold, Amazon, anywhere. My social media is my name, Kristen Hadeed. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And then I have a new website launching in May, just KristenHadeed.com. And then my company is Student Maid, studentmaid.com.
Awesome. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Christina Moreland. And if you're interested in the parenting book series, it's called Secrets of the Super Moms. You can check it out at secretsofthesupermoms with an S.com or fitmomsecrets.com. And that'll take you to the health and fitness book for moms who want to lead a healthy and fit lifestyle. So thanks so much, Kristen.
Yes, thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.